we cannot performance manage our way through collective trauma. PIPs won't fix it. Write-ups won't fix it. The progressive discipline playbook was built for a different area. Leaders need to coach to the dysregulation they're seeing. And I think that's a fundamentally different posture. And it's not soft. It's not permissive. It's strategic. Because if you don't address the dysregulation, the trauma, the performance problems will never resolve.
If we just start with 2020, we can all admit that we have experienced some genuine collective trauma on the planet. And in the US, we also had the racial reckoning. We have had all sorts of shifts in our sociopolitical world. We have immigration issues. We have families being broken up. We have all sorts of things happening right now that are essentially traumatizing us as a group, not just individuals. Because of that, every time people show up at work, they're also showing up carrying all of that with them. Coming up, you'll join a conversation with Ashley B. Stewart of the Corvian Group, where we will talk about what it means to have leaders who are dysregulated and leaders who have to support systems, including all sorts of people who are also dysregulated. What does it mean to do that? By understanding yourself, what you need, by trying to understand the people who work for you, and also by being really conscious of the fact that we all just have to honor each other's humanity. I'm Dr. Adriane Johnson Williams, and this is Equitable. Hello, Ashley B. Stewart.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I have been looking forward to it for quite some time. I've really been looking forward to an excuse to be like, let's get Ashley on here. So, yay.
Yay.
You're on here now.
Yes, I am.
If you would share with our audience, who are you as a human being? And then tell us a little bit about your work. And if there's a connection between the two, please do share that as well.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I'm Black.
Mm-hmm.
So let that settle in, right?
Yeah.
And what that means for me is that I am always working on my anti-Blackness. I'm always working on the ways in which oppression show up in my body and working around that, right? And two roles that I play that I'm most proud of, I'm a husband and a father. My wife, Desiree, and I are raising two incredible daughters, and we've made this decision to homeschool them through what we lovingly call the Stewart Academy of Excellence. Desiree is the full-time learning facilitator, and let's just say I'm a guest lecturer who shows up for some of the life lessons. Our girls are everything. They're into everything. They're into tennis and soccer and violin. And they're part of this wonderful homeschool community here in Maryland. And they're part of really what I'm most proud of. I get to hold these roles for them. So I say all of that because it matters for what we're going to talk about today. And I think the way I show up as a leader, as a facilitator, as a consultant, it all starts with how I show up at the dinner table. It starts with how I regulate my own emotions when life gets complex. Because my daughters are watching. And that's true for every leader, I think, listening to this.
Yeah. So tell us what that work is that you do.
Professionally, I've had what some people call a nonlinear career path. I call it a deeply intentional one. I just didn't always know the intention at the time. Right.
It was somebody's intention.
It was somebody's intention. I started off as a high school teacher, believe it or not. And from there, I became a speechwriter at the Department of Education. I went on to the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard and then joined the Foreign Service. And in the Foreign Service, I served as a diplomat in South Africa, Dominican Republic, and Mexico. And I loved the work. But then after the Foreign Service, I spent about 7 years at the Annie Casey Foundation leading leadership development work. And from there, thought I was tired of parachuting in and out of organizations, teaching people how to be leaders and to hold results. And I wanted to own culture. And so stepped into the Baltimore City Public School District, where I was overseeing talent development for about 11,000 employees in human capital. And that kicked my behind every day.
Yes, it did.
Yes, it did. Yes, it
believe
did,
that.
Fred. It was a beautiful, beautiful time, and it gives my life now fodder. And so in 2020, of all years, I founded the Corvian Group, which is a leadership development organizational consulting firm that works at the intersection of adaptive leadership and depth psychology and systems thinking.
You know, I founded Standpoint in the winter of 2019 and went full-time in January 2020. So
You did not.
yeah, so that means that your business is older than you think it is. You've been at this for a minute.
A little bit.
I feel like you have to count the pandemic while other people discount the pandemic. Those of us in entrepreneurship, we need to count it like 3 times because it really did age us
It did.
a lot.
It did. And I've got the
Mhm.
gray hairs to prove it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do.
Because it's not your age at all. It's the difficulty of the work. Let's go with that.
You know, it's the toll. It's the toll of it, and it's the rapidly changing times of how we're trying to help people to navigate complexity. What was complex in 2018 is not what's complex right now in 2026, right? And that pandemic, man, like if I wish I had a great script for it, but building capacity to lead when there isn't a script is tough.
hmm Yeah, not only is there not a script, but there's also not a consistent stage. There's not, I mean, everything is in flux. So there's no way to stay on top of it, which I think brings us really into the heart of the conversation that I want to have with you. Let's talk about emotional intelligence, particularly as it relates to the kind of both dysregulation and complexity that's going on in the workplace right now. How are you supporting leaders around this? What are you thinking about it?
So I think this is a term that is everywhere, actually, right? People being dysregulated, people trying to center their nervous systems, people trying to center and find a place that allows them to move from authenticity. The Corvian Group, we exist because I believe the most important leadership work happens below sort of the waterline if you think about iceberg, right? If we're all icebergs, what we see and what we produce is above that waterline, but the real work is below it. It's how we communicate, how we make decisions, how we handle conflict. And below the surface is the beautiful piece of our, perfectly dysregulated selves. It's our identity, our assumptions, our fears, our unprocessed experiences, the systems that we're embedded in. And so part of what I try to help leaders do is to go beneath it and combine sort of depth psychology with cognitive behavioral approaches. And that pulls on Heifetz's work and the personal role system framework and things out of the group relations world. But it's all designed to help people to do the interior work that the exterior moment demands. And it doesn't happen out there or start in the system. It starts internally with my system.
And I wonder if that is even more important for people who are leading other people to really do their work in order to manage the environment so that they're holding their people and their organization in a way that's going to really be maybe healthier and even more effective. What do you think about those words? Healthier, more effective. Is that a part of it?
It's certainly a part of it, right? Because dysregulation in the workplace is now the norm. It's not the exception. It's baseline condition, right? And we were earlier talking about the global pandemic and the simultaneous wars and anti-diversity and anti-immigrant political environment. You layer on top of that a work culture that's historically neglected human being well-being, well-beings of humans. That combination produces a nasty cocktail for collective drama and trauma, right? That continues to go unaddressed. And I think it's anyone in an organization's responsibility to contribute to culture, but it's the folks who call themselves leaders, whether they're first leading self or leading teams or leading leaders of teams, is to walk in every morning really as best they can, like regulated, as best they can, aware, as best they can, noticing what's happening within, because what's happening within can very quickly be mirrored in system.
Especially the higher you are in the hierarchy. I've had a couple of conversations with folks where, because the senior leader is so obviously dysregulated, right? Just everybody sees it. It's really tearing the system apart. In a couple of cases, the leaders are unwilling to acknowledge this and unwilling to do the work. And people are like, their organization's falling apart. People are dropping like flies. So that kind of thing, unwillingness to do the work in a position of leadership. Because if you're in a position of leadership and you're not willing to do the work, you're not leading anybody. You're leading your organization into the ground, but you're not actually leading people.
Yeah,
100%. Whew, so much.
Yeah.
So I want to go back and talk about the collective trauma part of this,
Yeah.
because I have said many, many times that the pandemic was a massive collective trauma that we have not attempted to deal with in any way as a collective, which I think some people may think that it's impossible to do, but there's an entire literature and there's plenty of history of nations going through things and dealing with it. So we can't use that as an excuse. And then we've piled on all these other things, as you said. We've piled on a socio-political environment that's destroying people, destroying families, creating panic, and now in all of these various wars and, all sorts of risk that some of our folks are in that are disproportionately, if you think about who's in the military, that all of that is coming into the workplace. Every single bit of that. And for some populations, there has been a lot of trauma in the workplace already, particularly Black folks. That's my go-to area because that's me. I know that part. And having already had to show up and manage the trauma we walk in with from our experience of being in the United States of America and having to do this, I am personally determined to get leaders to pay close attention to the degrees to which their own ability to regulate themselves is critical to subpopulations in their workplace.
For sure, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we cannot performance manage our way through collective trauma. PIPs won't fix it. Write-ups won't fix it. The progressive discipline playbook was built for a different area.
Yeah.
Leaders need to coach to the dysregulation they're seeing. And I think that's a fundamentally different posture. And it's not soft, right? It's not permissive. It's strategic. Because if you don't address the dysregulation, the trauma, the performance problems will never resolve.
I was talking to Crystal Collier, who's a colleague of ours, and she was on the podcast. We did 2 episodes actually. But one of the things that came up in our conversation was this idea of folks being concerned about getting too much into people's feelings in order to help them be effective. And I don't really think it's about feelings. Do you think it's about feelings?
What do you think it's about?
Well, I think it's not like that kind of idea of feelings like I am, you hurt my feelings, or I'm really sad about having to do this, or like really surface level feeling responses, meaning, like you said, the things that are above the line, as opposed to what's really going on with folks. And so this reacting to people in the moment in rooms to try to manage their feelings is different from really sitting down to understand what's going on. Don't you think?
I do. I think feelings are symptoms of things, right? They're not fact, but they're indicators that there's something else going on. If we sit in our feelings, then we sit in fragility, right? Because then if I wait to feel like getting up to go for a walk, I'm never walking. You understand? Right. So I think there's something very powerful about feelings, but sometimes we can over index on the power of feelings or what feelings should represent, and then we lose our ability to actually build capacity because we're stuck in our feelings. And I think the temptation is to locate dysregulation in the individual. That person who can't control their emotions or is too reactive, that leader is volatile. That's great. But the person who you are, your identity, your history, your stuff, that's one thing. You're also playing a role in an organization, and the system is the organizational construct around it, right? That we're operating in. And a lot of what I see people doing, a lot of my leaders, I'm coaching them around is to not take everything so interpersonally and recognize what are the systemic factors that are happening here, right? What are the fragmented structures or the ways that, the system's operating that benefits some, but not all. So I think it's about the balance of like acknowledging the feelings and then taking a step back to figure out like what is actually happening in the system. When you see a people manager losing their composure in a meeting, the question that we sometimes go to is, what's wrong with them? The real question is, what is this system asking them to hold? And have we given them a container for it?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a both
Oh, that's
and.
really
I think
powerful.
it's a both
Let's
and.
say that again. Say it again.
So,
What is this system
yeah,
asking them to hold?
yeah.
And
And have we given them the container for it?
yes, I'm gonna have to sit with that one.
I think it's a both and. I mean, there's one thing if you're just a bad actor in a place and you've got a history of that. But sometimes our bad actors, the people who, are maybe nasty to people or do people's bidding, they actually benefit the system in very, very contrived ways. And so we allow it.
Yeah, yeah. Now we also have to recognize that, chronic mental illness is real, and some people really do need a different kind of support, which is something I do tell leaders that there is a boundary where you have to recognize that some people may need different kinds of support, but
100%.
that's not everybody, which is why it's important to have a systemic lens. Systemic lens.
A systemic lens and personal relationship with proximity so that I can come to you, Adriane, and I can say, I notice X, Y, and Z is happening, right? I notice we're allowing this in the environment and what's going on with you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So what guidance are you doing, are you offering your leaders around how to really do their own work and take care of themselves? Because dysregulation is with us now, that this is what it is.
I think it's similar to what we actually talk about in that paper we sort of put together, right? I do. I think it is important to recognize that I can only love you, that I can only see you to the extent I can love or see myself. So the first thing I'm inviting leaders to do is to prioritize their own humanity. I started off by saying, you said, who are you as a human being? Well, in this moment, the first thing I said was, I'm Black. That's not for you and that's not for your listeners. That's for me and my body to hear myself on this platform reaffirm my Blackness. Okay? Because when I make space for myself, when I'm conscious to my disconsciousness around race, then I can be open and available to other people. So the first thing is to really prioritize your own humanity And that comes in many forms. And sometimes it's like, for me, someone like me, Adriane, I will stay in my head and I don't even live in my body. So I don't recognize that something funny is happening in a meeting because I don't feel it in my stomach because I've spent so much time putting that aside. So I'm coaching leaders to live in your body, to notice the things. Because if I don't live in my body, when you tell me something is off with you, I'm dismissing it. I don't have capacity to hold it for me. I darn sure don't have capacity to hold it for you. So that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is, so I like truffles. I like you truffle. You eat truffles, the mushrooms and all.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you know how people find truffles?
Yes.
There's like a whole thing. I've never done it, but like I've heard people like Oprah do it, right? And they get the dogs, and you go into the mountain, you do the whole thing, right?
Pigs.
The pigs, yes, right. To find the truffle, and what they're looking for is the scent, the essence of it at the root, and they are locked in. And so what I'm trying to invite and to coach leaders to do is to understand the root causes of things and to get curious of the why. Because if we just start snipping up, at the flower of a thing and wonder why it's coming back year after year, it's like, well, because we haven't actually thought about the root causes, the systemically ingrained pieces that are causing these things to happen over and over again. And that takes slowing down.
Yeah. Oh, and we don't want to slow down.
No, we don't.
We got to get it done. We got to get it done.
We got to move. That grant deliverable is here. We got to get this product out. We got shareholders calling us. We have all these different things. Yeah. So it takes really giving a crap about the why and slowing down to do that investigative work and to get curious enough about it that we can start to unpack and see. I've got lots of tools and frameworks to help people do this. But first, you need to have the willingness to be patient and to think about like what is under the get down.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said at the very beginning of this part, which was that you have lived in your head. So when I was a professor in West Virginia, easily one of the most difficult professional experiences of my life. But I want to say shout out to the people of West Virginia, because when I left the university, I had a great time. People were kind, people were generous, but on that campus, it was hard. So I had a therapist trying to help me live through it. And she said to me, she's like, you walk around like a disembodied head. And I remind myself of that because living in my body is what helped me survive and make the decision to leave. If I had not started to live in my body and feel the damage that was occurring, I would have kept pushing because I like to succeed. I like to win. I'm a win. Like, I figured it out. I see the pathway. I'm gonna win, which was not gonna happen because my body was telling me, "Girl, you in trouble. You got to go. You got to go." My body
Molly,
was being
you in
real
danger,
clear.
girl.
You in danger, girl. It was so real.
Yeah.
And I cannot agree more, or I struggle in coaching not to tell people, you don't want to tell people what to do, but sometimes it's like, look, this is not going to work out if you don't get in your body and recognize what's happening to you. So that's one of my coaching challenge. Not
Good
tell
for you.
people what to do all the time.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. Yeah, it's the thing. And it's a fine line. It's a fine line between that consultation and that coaching.
Yes. But in this moment, with everything that's going on, you can see people going towards the cliff. And the question is, how do you stop people before they go over the cliff if they're not being really conscious that that cliff is coming, that they're getting there real soon? And that's one of the challenges I'm experiencing, particularly when it comes to leaders struggling to understand that you can't just turn up the heat on people in your system, in the kind of adaptive leadership language, without also really understanding what's going on, and that you're not gauging the temperature You're like, we got to get this done, but you're not gauging the temperature. You're not gauging how people are responding. You're not really fully aware of what's happening. And I'm seeing a lot of that. We got to get this done. We got to work harder. The world is falling apart. The people we serve are struggling. The people, like our productivity is down, right? But it's like the cliff is coming.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something really specific you said that sits with me in what you just said. And it is the pronoun. It's the we. We've gotta, we've gotta, we've gotta. When I find myself in a very similar circumstance as you, I have to ask, who or what am I centering? And if I'm in the we with my client, I am already in a bad posture. Because the thing is, you're my client. You might fall off the cliff. I'm your coach. Will I be there with you? Will I be there when you hit the bottom? Right? And so often for me as a coach, like my regulation is about not over indexing with them. Right? And recognizing this is their journey. Well, I know they don't hit a cliff. I have a coaching client in philanthropy. I've been in philanthropy, so let me tell them about this. And this is a different day. It's a different context. There's a lot of stuff happening in their iceberg that wasn't happening in mine. And it's tough to give people the space to run into the wall, right? It's hard for me to watch my daughters to do that, much less my clients.
I love that that's what you picked up because I was putting on the voice of the leader, but I'm glad you said what you just said. I'm glad you said what you just
I'm
said
literal.
because
I'm literal.
that was
God.
so powerful.
Yeah.
And it is something that we all need to remember. We all need to remember. I was thinking about it in terms of a leader, like trying to rally other folks and trying to push people. And it's the kind of we of the leadership team and the we of the, because that's what I'm watching. I'm watching that happen. But I'm so glad you picked up the other thing because we need to hear that too. We being coaches, we all need to hear that.
Even in the role of the leader, there is some I think it's a beautiful question to ask ourselves, which is whom or what am I centering in this moment? And how is my anxiety influencing my urgency, my pace, my push of the group, my raising of the temperature, right? Because this is the vessel we have. And so it is not divorced from our own stuff.
I've been really spending a lot of time in the real kind of emotional intelligence skills space. And what I'm finding is how important, the different skills are in emotional intelligence are good for different purposes, but I'm finding the struggle with emotional self-awareness that folks are having and the ways that they don't understand their own emotions. And so what they're expressing to folks doesn't match what they think they're expressing. And they're beginning to see reflections back at them going, I don't know why they don't I don't know why they don't see this. It's like, well, do you see it? What do you see about yourself? It is really, for me, fascinating the way that leaders can deny their own emotions, that they don't even identify their own, but they are definitely willing to call out what other people are feeling and how other people are behaving and how they're actually, I've heard, too emotional. These people are just too emotional. And it's just like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And where are your emotions?
Right. What does that mean? And where are your emotions, right? And so when someone says someone is too this or not enough that, I think by whose yardstick are you measuring? And typically I've centered my own stuff, right? So if I'm not big on emotions, then anything else anyone else offers is probably too much, right? Or if you're someone like me who lives and swims in emotions and people aren't giving you enough, it's like, well, why are you holding back? Well, right? And so maybe they're not. Maybe they're being very strategic and calculated, or maybe I shouldn't be measuring it against my barometer, right? But this emotional intelligence piece is It's huge. I recently had an engagement in the South with a client, and we did a whole series on emotional intelligence for these leaders who needed to work better as a team, but really needed to own their own stuff, needed to be able to see self differently, to hold space for other people. And so we did work on triggers. We did work on figuring out the ways in which they stink it up and get in their own way. And that taught empathy, because once they could see that, wait a minute, these silly triggers or these serious triggers are stepping in my way of working with finance or legal or engineering or whomever, they could realize that, wait a minute, if my stuff stinks, I can have a little more empathy for your stuff when I realize that it's not the perfection I think it should be. Yeah.
Okay, Ashley B. Stewart, I'm gonna need you to write some of this stuff because I am still kind of amazed. I still close my eyes and I can see that iceberg you're talking about.
Mhm.
And I remember a workshop you did on triggers and that iceberg. And I just feel like you need to write it. So I'm declaring it here. It is now publicly
Okay.
declared. There's an audience. And I'm gonna keep pushing because that piece is so powerful. And I think more people should have access to your thinking around it because it's not everywhere. So I'm coming for you, Ashley.
Come on over. I appreciate it. I really do. And look, it's the work that you and I swim in, right? Emotional self-awareness and self-expression. And so it's the reason I got into this work. I started doing leadership development sort of on the nose at the Casey Foundation, as you know. And one of the first things I learned was MBTI. And the tool of MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, is self-awareness for self-expression, right? And so this theory of, or this notion that if I can see myself, then I can be in choice about how I express myself, right? And I love the iceberg. I love helping people to see that when, the CEO or the VP or someone's dysregulated, that it has ripple effect. How often do we walk around stinking up a place because we don't actually understand the influence we have on people? Last thing I'll say on this is I have this coach whom sounds like Jarian. And no. Mariana Kia, right, was coaching
Yes.
me one time, and I was at the school district, and she said, you seem like you're very systems aware. I don't think you quite understand the influence that you have on people. And I immediately thought the influence of my person because I'm charismatic or da-da-da. So there's that, but there's also the informal and formal authority that I carry.
Yes. That's where influence really lives.
So I think I'm just being just Ashley. But you layer that with my role, you layer that with dysregulated other bodies in an organization, and suddenly my one action reverberates and has ripple effect in the organization, right? So I don't know where I'm going with this other than to say that it is important when you talk about emotional intelligence that it starts with people building their capacity to be self-aware and then make the decision to be in choice about how they self-express. Because we are all just bopping around in an organization, in a system, impacting people. And often we do not understand fully the impact we're having on other people. Because you got to remember, they got a bunch of stuff too.
Yes.
They got a bunch of, stuff too.
I want to add two things to this. We're going to
Please.
layer on
Layer.
power. We're layering on power. And then I want to hear you talk more about how you understand and consider complexity in systems. So let's do both of those together. This is your final exam. Let's do both of those together. Layering on power and complexity on top of all of this dysregulation and emotional intelligence stuff.
I used to think that power wasn't real, that it was made up, that it was really in the eye of the beholder, That's how my whiteness coming out. Not wanting to recognize that power is a real thing. As I think about power in systems and powers in organization, I think again it's akin to what's necessary is that people understand that we all have power. It is not equal. That we can sometimes give people power that we shouldn't. And that in a lot of ways, power is tied to our survival. Where I sit in the pecking order of an organization, how I wield my influence, who I'm able to influence. And then let's just peel it back to the layer of the place where you like to go, and I love to go, which is like the kind of earth suit we live in, right? The melanin content of our beings, how that intersects, and what kinds of socialization we have around race, gender, identity, you name it, right? And so all these things get negotiated in silence. That's why I thought power wasn't real, right? But it's a hard thing to see and to nail and and so when it's hard, then we can let ourselves off the hook and say, well, I don't have any more power than you have, or you shouldn't feel that way. And it's really for our own self-absolution, and it shouldn't be. And I think that's what also makes it complex, in that someone said to me years ago, when something fishy or haywire is happening in the system, somebody's always benefiting.
Yes, this is truth.
This
It
is
is truth.
right? And so you got to ask yourself, I stop asking who's benefiting. I start asking, how am I benefiting? If everyone could ask themselves that, how am I benefiting from what I'm thinking is just like something that's hard to do, versus something that's really truly complex, versus something that really is just complicated, that can be solved with a technical fix, versus something that is actually layered, and I'm therefore going to have to shift and change how I think.
Shift, change, and also give up something. You're going to have to lose something.
Well, Adriane. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. That loss is sometimes theoretical. Often it is not. I'm curious what you think about that loss in organizational life, and what you're asking people to step into.
Ooh, let me tell you, I got a lot of thoughts on this. So I think about loss, particularly when it comes to those things and systems that are benefiting folks from an equity standpoint. One of the things that's difficult for folks to say who advocate for equity, particularly racial equity, is no, we're not asking people to give up anything. We're asking for things to be, it's not a zero sum game. It's not this, it's not that. True, that all of that is true. And if you set up an equitable system, particularly around things like promotion and sponsorship and access to all sorts of things that are kind of external to the system, but benefit you in the system, somebody's going to lose, right? Somebody's going to lose because right now you can be mediocre, you can be, just friends with somebody, and you can get more benefit. But if it's really around equity, then mediocrity is not going to get you where you need to go. And so I feel like that is actually fundamental to the mass exclusion, the eviction of Black women from the workplace right now. Because as I say this all the time, among my friends and peers, we were told, you have to get these degrees. You have to have this experience. You have to get this graduate degree. You have to know more. You have to, and because the system was telling us that's the only way you're going to get in. That's the only way you're going to move up, which meant that many of us are better credentialed, more qualified, better experienced. And there are other people in the system who have not been forced to do all of these things because it's been easier to move through and up in the system because of who they are and who they know, primarily white men. And then there's white women who have benefited from all of the programs, the affirmative
All of the
action and all
yep.
that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they've gotten higher benefit, greater benefit from it. But again, you got to, I mean, if you want to lie about meritocracy and push out people who are managing all sorts of distress, talk about living in really working to regulate yourself because they're better credentialed, better educated, higher performers, then you really have to be practicing under a delusion that meritocracy exists. And what you're realizing is that you're flagging the loss. You're flagging it. We lost something and we don't like it.
Mm-hmm. And
Like
we
this
don't like
system is
it.
supposed to make sure that we win and we don't like that we've lost something. So yeah, the loss is real and people will fight it. But if you really want the best, if you really want to maximize effectiveness, then you got to think about who's in that system. And I'm not saying all Black women are better, but what's happening in this country right now is telling us that a lot of Black women were better. Like that is like the you don't get expelled if you're really interested in meritocracy and merit and success. That's not what happens.
No, that's not what happens. That's not
I
what
told you I had
happens.
a lot to say.
Well, I appreciate you saying all of that, and we could keep going because it is it. I think what you pulled out for me is the loss I'm coaching people through at present is mainly around the loss of giving up their identity to who their mamas told them they were. And for a lot of white leaders, that's hard. And Black leaders too, for other reasons, right? The same way I was told, other people have been told, you might have been told you'll be twice as good, da, 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 da. That's the thing we have to actually also shed as well, right? And there's loss around that because that's gotten us here. And so coaching leaders and white leaders in particular around really understanding like who they thought they were, the benefits they've lean and live on has been about the oppression of other people. And so like to tie it back, dysregulation doesn't land equally. Whose emotional expression gets met with curiosity, right? Who gets met with performance improvement? We're not building big enough containers for everyone's identity to be an asset and not an obstacle, which means that collective trauma is acknowledged and it's not suppressed. We've got a lot of work to do in the leadership development space for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we could talk and talk and talk, but apparently we don't have all the time in the world.
We don't.
So Ashley, if you would, we like to close out by sharing with the audience what your definition of equity is and how it shows up in your life and work.
At a base level for me, equity is about who gets to show up whole. And in my life, it shows up in how Desiree and I educate our daughters. We homeschool precisely because we want them to learn in an environment that honors their full humanity, that honors their afros, their puffs. And in my work, it shows up when I facilitate spaces where a first-generation leader from a marginalized community has the same access to deep development experience as someone from a privileged institution working at a big bank. It also shows up in the frameworks themselves, the iceberg, person role system, some critical incident work that I do. They all insist that the invisible, the beneath the surface, the historically silenced, that's where the real work lives, and I'm willing to see it.
All right, then. So if people who are joining us in this conversation want to find you, where can they find you? On the interwebs, out there in the world.
On these interwebs, you can find the Corvian Group at corviangroup.com. I'm on LinkedIn as Ashley B. Stewart. And the firm is also on LinkedIn as well under the Corvian Group. So you can find us there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation and for letting me take up some of your very valuable time. I really appreciate being able to share this time with you.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you having me on your platform.